Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Talks at Google virtual event. I am Madhuri Dugirala, and I'm a vice president in one of the GTech teams at Google. Before we start the conversation, we will have time for the Q&A towards the end of the session. So as you think of your questions, please do add it to the chat on the right side. I am very excited to introduce our fabulous and fantastic guest today, Aliza Knox. Aliza built and led APAC businesses for three of the world's top technology firms, Google, Twitter, and Cloudflare. Named 2020 APAC IT Women of the Year and to the top 100 women in IT Singapore. She spent decades as a global finance and consulting executive and is currently a non-executive board director and a senior advisor for BCG. She now shares her passion and lessons learned with the next generation of business leaders, guiding companies across the new frontiers while building and maintaining strong connections between teams around the world. She has been featured in outlets like Business Insider, Quartz, TechCrunch, The Economic Times, and is a regular columnist for Forbes, where she shares her wisdom and humor, and you'll realize that more through the session, to help professionals who dream of doing it all. She is the author of the new book, Don't Quit Your Job, The 6 Mind Shifts You Need to Rise and Thrive at Work, which presents the 6 empowering essential mind shifts which are necessary to rise and thrive in your career and to love your life at the same time. With that, Aliza, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Talks at Google.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. I'm delighted to be here, especially for those who know the term as a Zoogler, somebody who's formerly been at Google. It's a fantastic way to reconnect.
Great. On that note of Zoogler, Aliza, before we even get started on our session today, could you share a fun experience of yours at Google?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I remember about getting here to Singapore in late 2007 and then early 2008 was that we were just in a serviced office space, nothing like the large campus that Google has now. And one of the things that happened was there are 3 or 4 of us who would kind of on the down low rush into the office every morning, trying to be earlier than the next person because there was only one large monitor and we each wanted to use it. So we were scrambling for resources, which seems very long ago when I think of all the facilities at Google Singapore that I've seen today.
That definitely seems like a different era of Google for sure. So my first question to you, Aliza, you've talked about seeing your career as a series of software upgrades. So can you explain what you mean and what made you shift into the version you currently are?
Sure. I don't think I would have thought of this until I'd been in tech, so it's only in hindsight, but I would describe my career as release 1.0 being my many years at the Boston Consulting Group, climbing the ranks, and then as a partner, and then at Visa and Schwab. So really focused on financial services and consulting to financial services companies. And then 2.0 was tech. So running online sales for Google at a time when that existed. So it was all the medium and small business for Asia, and then running all of Twitter and all of Cloudflare in the APAC region. 3.0 is figuring out what I want to do when I grow up, which at the moment is sitting on boards, having written this book, doing some very serious mentoring, particularly of an Australian female Olympian and of a young woman from Afghanistan who I mentored for a number of years when she was at school in Bangladesh and have now gotten out to the US and who's at college there. So I have the ability to keep myself intellectually stimulated, contribute, but also give back in some ways. So those are the 3. And, as we're living longer, maybe there'll be a 4.0 and even a 5, who knows?
That's very insightful. And as a computer science engineer, I can absolutely relate to that versions and upgrades. It resonates a lot with me. And your book has been, I would say, a game changer. So tell us more about the title of your book, especially amidst the theme of the Great Resignation.
Sure. Well, having discussed it with the engineers beforehand, it seems the only way to show you the book is to stick it right over my face. which is, of course, silly, but at least you can see that don't quit your day job. And what's funny about it is, it sounds like it's going against the zeitgeist of the day. Everybody's quitting, the great resignation, the great reshuffle, the great reprioritization. And I'm really not arguing against that in total, because I left my job as well. So, I wouldn't be a great role model. I think, it's a great catchy title. The probably more important part of it is the subtitle, The 6 Mind Shifts to Rise and Thrive. But it's also that when I spend a lot of time talking to people who come to me, often at a crossroads of their career, or when they're trying to make a big decision and they want some help. And I think it's, because I'm in tech, because I'm a woman, because I've been around for a long time, they think I'll have some incredible insight, which very occasionally I do. And sometimes when I listen to them, I really realize that it's not about their job, right? A lot of what they're talking about is maybe tangential to the job. It's about how they've integrated work and life. I don't like that term work-life balance. That always makes me think of a seesaw. And it's like, well, okay, if work is up, then life must be down. Or if life is up, then work must be down, which I don't think is right. But it is about how do I bring all that together? And I think that sometimes when people don't do that, they're not happy and they start blaming it on their job. And you'll see there have been statistics out during the Great Resignation that a lot of people who have resigned aren't finding the next gig that much better. Many have found that the new roles are poor fit, or the frustrations from their previous job exist in the new ones too. So there was a survey that the Muse reported on saying 75% of workers who quit said they felt surprise or regret at having done it. So what I'm trying to do is share the insights that I have about why that might not be the best next step. So I'm not saying never quit, but sometimes it's not the right step and you're expecting something from that resignation that you're not going to get. You're just going to find the same things in the next role.
I love that, Aliza. Like the words you've used are inspiring. Like don't quit, rise, thrive, mind shift. So I think it absolutely took decades of research to arrive at some absolutely impactful title and the themes.
Can I say that you sound like somebody who's been at Google, clearly enunciating keywords right away, whether they're search terms or keywords? That's great.
That's what Google does to us. And I think in your book, the Don't Quit Your Day Job, which is aimed at people who have a job or who are seeking one, right? Pretty much most people. You talk about the 6 mind shifts that underpin those who succeed in the corporate world. Which one do you think has been most pivotal to your own success, Aliza, and why?
So the one I think that's been most important for me is stamina. And I wrote this equation, which I'm hoping will eventually become as famous as E = MC squared, but I have a long way to go, which is that stamina equals perseverance plus enthusiasm. So I think there's a lot written about grit, which is important. There's a lot written about resilience and staying in the game. But I think what really underpins stamina is that perseverance, is the resilience, but also having an attitude that makes it possible for you. So I can just give you a couple of examples. One is, for me personally, I didn't make partner the first time I was up at BCG. So for those of you who know organizations like that are up or out, you have a few chances. If you don't make it, you need to leave. Plus, of course, you want to rise just the way you might want to make vice president, which is an amazing step, Madhuri, for you. That's a hard thing to do in a tech firm. And so I could have left. I could have said, there were 4 of us up, 3 men and me, and 2 of the other people made it, and I didn't. And actually, the other person who didn't make it left. And I thought, I really want this. It's not clear. The feedback wasn't that clear about why I didn't get it, but I'm gonna stay in there and do it with as much of a smile on my face as I can manage. Obviously, not the first day, but thereafter. And I did make it the next time around. And I told a story in the book about a young woman named Barbara, not her real name in this case, who was at a tech firm. I met her, and she had met me through friends and said, you know what, I'm leaving my job. And I said, why? She said, well, I am head of sales. I'm 27. I've been head of sales for 3 years. I'm at this startup, and they want to bring somebody in over me. And it's demeaning and it's demoralizing, and I've got to go. you know, and I said, you like the company and would you stay? She said, I really like the company. If they kept my job, I would stay. And I said, well, as it happens, I know the guy who's coming in over you, and he's great at developing people. He really cares a lot about his team. I mean, you can always quit, but you could try it out for 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months and see what you think, because I think you might learn something from him. You might decide that you actually get more out of working with him than you do if you go to another job where you have no one to help develop you. Because she wasn't getting much from the founder CEO, who really had to spend his time, you know, doing lots of other things. And she did stay. I'm sure she got lots of advice, and I wouldn't put it down just to me, but she did stay. And she got 2 promotions while she worked for this gentleman who came in, who layered over her, which is something that many of us in tech firms have seen. And the second time she got promoted was while she was on maternity leave, which should not even be worth mentioning. But unfortunately, in this day and age, I think it is still worth talking about. It's unusual. And now she's a chief revenue officer at, I think, a Series D funded firm. And so my view is that she could have left. She would have gotten another head of sales job, probably at another startup of a similar size, and she would have done well. She would have done well over the years in those kinds of firms. But because she had the stamina to stay, and she made the decision she was going to do it with grace and enthusiasm, she got a lot out of it, learned more because she had somebody who was really investing in her, and I think rose higher than she might have without it. So, you know, there's so many stories about having stamina, which really get you where you want. One other short one, I have a good friend who went through a long recruiting process, really wanted this quite big job, a step up for him at a new firm. And the search firm called him back and said, you know, the client really likes you, but you're a bit more out of the box. They're going to hire somebody who looks just like what they've always had. And, you know, if you've been through that process, you kind of feel really excited about the new job. You're ready to leave your old one. He was very disappointed. But, you know, he said, okay, that's life. Like, I'm just going to go on. He didn't sulk. He didn't pout. He didn't take it too personally that I know of. You know, he just got on with it. And about 2 weeks later, they called him back and said, you know what? The negotiations with that person who looks like what they're used to didn't work out. Didn't tell this guy why, but they just didn't work out. And they'd really like you. And, you know, he didn't take it too personally. Okay, I'm second choice, or this was a bad thing that happened to me. And he went to that job and he's thriving. So I think there are just lots of instances where stamina and sticking with something has been the right thing to do.
I think that's excellent, Aliza. And stamina is perseverance and enthusiasm. So I'm already waiting for your next piece of writing work. So you will give us a lot more insights on stamina. And it's inspiring to hear about the stories you've shared about Barbara and others. On that note of stories, where do you draw the stories in the book from?
They're basically all people I've met along the way. And, you know, people who are willing to share their stories. Some people obviously don't want to talk about their situations at all, and some share, but with a disguised name. I would say, given my background, it's a bit skewed towards tech and a bit to Asia, but it includes Australia, the US, Europe, LATAM. And it's got people from age 22 to 65, all different sort of ethnic backgrounds. The idea for me was that it might be relatable for people, so that you could maybe in some case, you know, as you read it, see yourself or somebody like you, so that you didn't think, okay, well, and I think it's about 60% women, 40% men, so that everyone who reads it will find a couple examples at least where they say, oh, that could have been me.
Thanks for sharing, because I've always felt it is stories which help people resonate. When they see themselves in a story, then I feel they feel even more motivated. Like, if that person can do, I could also do that as well. I'm so eager, I think, now to read more about all the stories in your book. And as I think of the book, what are some of the key takeaways you want readers like me or others who are watching this to get from your book?
One of the things that I think is maybe not so intuitive that I like is this idea that you're in a relationship with your career. Sometimes we talk about the career ladder as if it's this object that you climb, which isn't really how most careers work anymore. And I mean, clearly it's not another human being or a pet, but most of us are in relationships with another person, could be our parents, could be a spouse, could be an animal who responds to us, more than one. And if you read material on that, everything from kind of silly magazines that say, 13 questions to tell you if your relationship's going well, to, very serious sort of therapy books, they all seem to say, don't put everything on like the partner, the one other person. You will be disappointed. They cannot fulfill all of your needs. And if you do that, you might actually hurt the relationship that you're building or that you've built. And yet somehow with careers, I think we've gone from something, even I'm not old enough to have been alive during the Industrial Revolution. So I guess at that point, people came to factories and said, this is good. I can earn money. I can pay for food and shelter. And then over time, we got to a point where careers could be fulfilling, rewarding, which I think is very important. Over the last 20 years or so, many companies have set examples, including Google, of being a mission-driven organization, where we really feel that we're, by being in this organization, we're contributing to something in the world. And then we got to a point where it was sort of like a career should fulfill your passions. And to quote another Zoogler, Kim Scott, who wrote Radical Candor and has since written another book about working, that might be too high a bar for us to expect from our career for everybody. If you're a founder, if you've created something that's everything you ever wanted, maybe your career is everything to you, but most of us still have a life outside. And so I sometimes think that when people treat their career like that, they can only be disappointed because it isn't going to fulfill everything. And one great example that isn't in the book, I had lunch a few months ago with a professor friend of mine, and she's an avid equestrian. She loves horses. She loves to ride. And I'm a little bit scared of horses. So I don't really know what all the options are if horseback riding is your profession for a career. I know that you can be a jockey because I know about like the Kentucky Derby. I know that there is like equine therapy. So maybe you can be a therapist with horses, but I don't think there are that many horse-related careers. I'm not sure. So if what you'd want to do is ride horses, maybe there's not so many ways you can fulfill that passion and have a career. And what she described to me was one of the reasons that she's a professor. She loves teaching. She loves the topic she talks about. She teaches at a business school. That career affords her the financial means to have horses and have a place where she can ride them, and also the schedule that means she has some very long breaks. So depending on where she's teaching, she may or may not be able to like drive to the country somewhere to ride, but she has these big breaks at summer and the end of the calendar year because she's not in the Southern Hemisphere. So, she has Northern Hemisphere summer and the holidays at the end of the year where she can go off for long periods and really be ensconced in a rural situation where she has horses. So to me, that's a great example where she likes her job. I'm not saying she doesn't like it, but it may not be her passion, and she can indulge in her passion and have a career that supports it. And that maybe if she had thought, I have to have a career that fills all my passions, she wouldn't have found something she liked.
And I think the line you said, what a powerful statement, right? Which is you are in a relationship with your career, and all the examples you have shared. It's very powerful because it is how do you nurture, like how you nurture and invest in your relationships. If you think of your career as a relationship, it's really powerful. And I think it's a great practical way to actually implement it in our day-to-day lives. You mentioned about how one can assemble own personal board of directors. So is this part of building social capital, and what's your advice on how does one do that?
Sure. So there's a chapter in the book called Connection Trumps Tech Savvy, even in tech. And I think all of us who've been in tech think there's some fantastic innovations and tools we can use, including the one that's enabling this call. But I might be a dinosaur, but I still believe that there's a lot to be said for interpersonal relationships. And most people want mentors, and some people get them over time, which be a person who maybe sticks with you your whole life and that evolves and really knows a lot about you. And I think people really need sponsors or advocates at work. So the person who's going to say, Madhuri is up for her next promotion and she really deserves this because this is what she's delivered at Google. But we don't always have mentors around, or mentors who know everything about all the things we want to know. So the way I think about a board of directors mimics what we have at corporate boards, which are groups of people who've been assembled to try to give different perspectives on the business and ask good questions. So you might have an age range. You might have people who know different relevant industries. You might have people who know different functions, whether it's HR or tech or ESG. And so for you as an individual, why not have this kind of small group of people who can give you dispassionate advice that's way different than your friends who will give you moral support and cheering and a shoulder to cry on, but who can maybe give you some insights, who've gotten to know you over time. Real boards tend to refresh every 3 to 6 to 8 years, and you might want to do that with a personal board of directors too. And there's lots of description about how to build them and what to do in the book. And there's they would be able to sort of bring different skills or expertise. And there's an example in the book about Susie Nicoletti, who was at Google. So some people might even know her or know of her on this call. And she shared that when she was up for promotion at Google, she didn't get it. She was in sales. And if I boil it down, basically, she was doing a great job with her clients. She was hitting all her numbers, and she didn't get promoted. And her friends at Google said, wow, it's so unfair. You definitely deserve this. We don't know why you got it. And so, that made her feel better. But it didn't help her understand what maybe she should be doing differently. And of course, you talk to your manager, but it's not always clear. And some managers are better than others. And she happened to know an older guy outside who'd also been in sales. And he said to her, if I think about the way I hear you talk about your work, you're super engaged. You love your clients. I hear all about them to the extent it's not confidential. I know what you've achieved, but I don't hear you talking about your colleagues very much. And I know you're an individual contributor right now, but your boss is looking at making you a team lead. And it is possible that what the boss is worried about is that you're not going to be very inclusive when you manage a team, that it's still going to just be about you and your clients. And this man said to her, I know that is not true about you. I know that you're a very inclusive, sharing person who's great at teamwork, but you may not be presenting that in the way you speak and act at Google. And I happen to know the person who was her boss at the time and happen to have found out that that was indeed a big part of the issue. And because I don't think Susie could have identified that this person was on her board of directors at that time, but he was in a small coterie of people who she knew who could give outside perspective. And because he shared that with her, and because she was able to take that in, she changed some behavior around that and indeed got promoted the next time. Now, not every story is going to be like this. I've told you her story of getting promoted after waiting, and mine as well. Sometimes it won't happen. But having these people who can give you advice or having the stamina to stay in is often very important. And of course, I just want to say there's more to social capital than this. It's just one part of it. But yes, I think it's part of social capital.
No, I cannot agree more with you. And I really love the words you use, which is a lot of us heard about the personal board of directors. But when you think of the word social capital, it actually inspires you to build more of that. And even if I look at myself, Aliza, if not people like you or people like other personal board of directors who've really showed you the mirror and not just giving you the feedback, but really telling you, that's what we do in boards, right? Whether it is corporate boards, where they're telling you how to actually accelerate your growth, help your customers. And that's exactly what you need as well. Thank you for sharing Susie's story. I think Susie's stories, we know many Susies exist, and we need such board of directors to really help you pinpoint, here are the areas I think you can work on as well.
Right. Or even just ask questions, which is a lot of what boards do.
And I think a lot of good coaches and a lot of good personal board of directors, I think they ask the best questions to make you think. And I loved what you said, which is, and I think they start from the point of you have it in you, but maybe think more about what you could do. And I think that's a great tip for the audience you've shared as well. You've talked a lot about stamina, and it's actually personally one of my favorite words as well. We know that many people are contemplating either a job change at the moment or what do I do, in the next part of my career. And stamina is very essential to the longevity in a career, seeing the bigger picture, rising above the low points, especially. And all of us have hit those low points. So could you give us some practical strategies on how do we deal with those specific career stumbling blocks? It could be like difficult bosses or feeling stuck in a job that you no longer challenges you. So, would love to hear more on that.
Sure. Again, I'm going to try to address this with a couple of stories of how people have dealt with these issues, and I cover more in the book. Before I do, I think one overall really important point is if you are going to go because of any of these things, make sure you're going to a job that you want rather than fleeing one you don't want. Similar to what I said in the beginning about people who've expressed regret, also during the Great Resignation, there was a statistic shared in the Wall Street Journal from LinkedIn that something like 5% of Americans who left their jobs in the Great Resignation had already gone back to them. And you can imagine that that understates the number because many people who decide that they would have liked their old job back can't get it, right? So you've really got to put the time in and have the stamina to at least stay until you found something you really want and not just getting away. But let me give you examples for two of these. So again, there's a story in the book, changed name, of a young engineer I know named Kathy, who's in the US and works for a really big tech firm. She worked for them for 2 summers as an intern, which is common. They loved her, gave her a full-time job. She went there, super happy for like the first 3 months, big reorg, ended up with a manager who she found incredibly unpleasant and unable to work with. And she did go to HR and, which I think is the first port of call. I mean, she spoke to him and then she went to HR, but they just couldn't work it out. So she had called me for advice about how to leave and how disappointed she was. And I just said, I don't think you need to leave. You work for a very, very big firm. It's not Google, by the way, but you work for a very large firm and they have lots of jobs in that firm. She's like, no, my reputation is ruined. I said, I don't think so. You're like brand new and you've had 2 summers where you have advocates, right? There are people from those 2 summers who really like you. And so we worked out a plan where she went back to those advocates and one other person that she'd met kind of serendipitously along the way, who she had something in common with and who was somewhat senior, and said, listen, I really like this company. I really want to be here. I don't want to badmouth my manager, but I can't get along and I don't know what's going on. And of course, he's more senior than I am. I'd like to stay. Do you have any advice? What can you do? And between those 3 people, they found 2 other jobs in the firm. She's moved. She's doing something else. It's not a promotion or anything. It's just a lateral move. And she's happy. And so, her first idea was, I'm miserable. My reputation's ruined. I have to quit. And she was miserable, but her reputation wasn't ruined and she didn't have to quit. And so, there's lots of stories like that where if you just think a little bit about it, maybe you can maneuver. Then there's another guy in the book, also named Disguise, named Tim Liu, who is at a company in Singapore and really looked around. He actually went outside, did job dating, looked at other roles, said, there's nothing I like. I feel stuck in my job, though. I'm not learning anything. I've been doing the same job for too long. I'm not going to get promoted right away because there's not another role open. So I'm kind of bored and I'm not really enjoying coming to work. And what he ultimately did, there's a lot written on job crafting. It took him a while, but he went to his manager and said, listen, I'm bored. I need more challenge. I know there's not another job for me right now, but could we at least come up with something that would keep me interested or keep me feeling challenged? I mean, he was meeting, it's not like he wasn't performing. He was meeting all his targets. His team was happy. So in a way, I guess you could say he was asking for a bit more work, but he wanted the chance to exercise his curiosity and learn. And, he had a decent manager who said, sure. And you don't even have to be a decent manager to say yes to that, because particularly during the Great Resignation with a lot of attrition, a lot of switching right now, I can't think of many managers who have an employee who is anything from meets expectations to up, who wouldn't respond to a plea like that. Like, I want to stay. Can you help me find something interesting to do? I mean, most companies aren't in the position where they say, oh, well, too bad, get lost, go find something interesting outside. And so they tend to call that job crafting. So here are 2 good examples of stumbling blocks where quitting, again, wasn't probably the right solution. They both wanted to be at those companies. They just needed different things and they got it.
I think those are really some practical and insightful tips and strategies you've shared, because the reality is all of us hit those blocks. But I think the strategies you've shared now, and I think the more we read in the book, we will really get, like, whenever we hit those low points, now we know how to get out of those low points, these practical tips.
Well, those are only a few, but yeah, at least some ideas. You can see that people do it.
Yes. And when I think of stamina, and I think if we've asked anybody to describe that worked with you, Aliza, they'd say that you have real action orientation and get a lot of done. And I feel your life and your story and your career is also a great example of having huge stamina. So tell us more on what are those one or two habits that allow you to achieve more than others and have so much stamina, and I should say so much of excitement and energy.
Well, the things that give me stamina are, if I'm going to be silly about it for a minute, they are exercising every day, not too silly, and hold it up like my book, Diet Dr. Pepper, my favorite drink that is very quirky. But if I am more thoughtful about it, I think the things I've learned over the time are to make sure that I do have time for some of the things I'm passionate about, like exercise, which particularly includes badminton, where I'm a permanent advanced beginner, but love playing, or travel. And I've also learned to set boundaries, which I think is something that people really had to work hard on, particularly during the pandemic. And those, if you live in Asia and work for a US firm, or maybe if you run France for Samsung or the US for Atlassian, you are always going to have people asking for early morning calls, midnight calls. And you're going to have to do some of them, but I think you can say, for example, I'll do one more set of mornings with really early calls and one set of nights with really late calls, and not the late night followed by the early morning. And you can put some constraints around what work is asking of you. And I do think that the pandemic made it a little bit easier for people to do that. I mean, in the beginning, it made it harder because everyone, it used to be, well, I won't call Madhuri because she's at home. But now, of course, it's like, Madhuri's at home all the time, so I can call her. But then after that, when people realized we were in the middle of this kind of time soup and there was no way to put a boundary around anything, I think there began to be more respect for people who said, okay, my mornings are quiet time and my afternoons I'll do email, or you cannot reach me between 6 and 8 p.m. in the evening because I'm doing something else. I'll look at my computer again at 8. So I think those are all things that have helped give me stamina. And I think the other is really to make sure that you mostly like your job. You know, not every day, not every minute. I mean, to me, it's quite interesting. There's been all this stuff written about the quiet quit, which seems, the interpretation of which seems to run from, okay, I only put in what I need to do to meet expectations, and the rest of the time I have to myself, and I put boundaries up. That sounds pretty realistic to me. You know, not everybody wants to be the CEO or be the next leader, and, you know, they can do a good job and put it in containers, and then they can have all the time they want to surf or be with their family or whatever it is. But at the other end, they're kind of talking about, you know, I think the expression is mailing it in all the time, you know, almost not being present. Sometimes in tech, they used to call it resting investing. And to me, that seems soul destroying. And I can't imagine having the stamina to do that, even if I didn't have to work so hard, if I really didn't have at least some enjoyment from what I'm doing every day. So of course, this is only my perspective and that of what I've seen, you know, from the people I've been surrounded by. But I think most of the time you need to have something about your job that you like most days. Otherwise, if you're really miserable, then you probably do want to ignore my advice and quit your day job.
No, that's great advice. I think there are portions of your job which you love, and make sure they're dear to your heart, and have your regular rituals and behaviors which continue to build your stamina as well. Those of you who have questions, please don't forget to put your questions on the chat. We will get to them shortly. I have just another question or two, and then we will open it up for the audience questions. Alisa, the next question I have for you is, what do you think is changing with the hybrid nature of work in terms of connections, flexibility, or boundaries, etc.?
So we touched on it a minute ago. I think there's many positives in terms of flexibility, and maybe not needing to, you know, just put in FaceTime just to be at the office. I think there are some downsides. There have been some studies done that show that less visibility at work might lead to fewer promotions, which means lower pay. Some of those studies are old. Stanford did one at C-Trip about 10 years ago where they let customer service people stay home, and some came in, and the people who came in had more promotions and therefore more pay rises than the people who stayed home, having nothing to do with their output. So I do worry about that, although I think maybe the pandemic has kind of changed that mindset. I also see a number of, I'm a senior advisor at BCG, as you mentioned. I happen to see a lot of professional services firms, lawyers, accountants, consulting. And a lot of those jobs, the junior people learn a bit by apprenticeship or osmosis. So they might not want to email a partner and say, can you get on a hangout with me for 15 minutes to look at my document and tell me if it's okay? They might be too intimidated. But if they pass the partner in the mini kitchen, they might say, oh, Paul, could you just look at this? Or Sui Ling, can you just tell me if I've got that right? It's 2 minutes, it's quick, it's mostly happenstance, and they don't have to ask for something. So I am concerned about how those jobs will develop and have some insight there. So I think, we still need to work on how is this new world of work going to work. But I do think things are changing and for the better, but we still have some reimagining to do.
And I really loved the title of your sixth mind shift, which is Distance is the New Diversity. And I think what you've just explained us, it's really upon all of us to reimagine that future in the new way and not leave the lessons behind.
It's funny, just before you go on, I wanted to tell you that one of the other, this is not an equation, but something I wrote for the book that I feel strongly about is it would be great especially when people started writing about everything being remote, we should take the R out of remote, and that would leave us with emote. What are the ways on Zoom or on Hangouts or, in other environments where we can continue to build relationships with people, even if we're not going to see them as much.
And that's so true, Alisa, because the whole definition of remote has changed. And love what you're saying. I think if the technology is helping us, the distance is no longer a barrier and boundaries are getting blurred across as well. This book has been inspiring for many, and I'm sure when you wrote this book as well, it was a great experience for you as well. So I wanted to hear from you, what made you write this book and what inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope to achieve from publishing it?
I wrote the book for two reasons. One, I end up going out a lot for coffee with people who want to talk about these crossroads or decisions. And I don't like coffee. So there's only, I drink like very weak decaf latte. You just sort of wave the coffee over it. So it's not sustainable for me to keep going out for coffee. But the other more important reason is it's also not sustainable because it's not scalable. And for people at Google and anybody in tech, probably the first lesson you learn is whatever you're doing in these firms to generate growth, it has to be scalable. So even if I could go out, even if I liked coffee and I could go out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that wouldn't be enough time. And I found that there were a fair amount of similarities in the types of questions I was getting from people. So I thought, why don't I try to write it down and share it in a book as a way of giving back, and share it in these relatable stories as a way of giving back. And, my hope is that people read it, or even just from this talk, maybe they get one nugget they can use now, and then in 5 weeks or 5 years, something else comes back to them that wasn't something they would have come to on their own or come to as quickly on their own. And it helps them enjoy their career and their life more, or accelerate their career. So I see it as a very small way of giving back. And then the author profits, which are also small. The publisher makes me say author profits because most of the profits go to them. But the author profits are going to something called Vital Voices, which is a nonprofit that's been around for 25 years that's directly invested in over 20,000 female change makers across 184 countries. And it's driven by the notion that women are the key to progress in their communities and nations, and that we can't, as a world, move forward without women in leadership and policymaking positions. So it's another organization that I support. And so the book was one way of giving back to them as well.
I can clearly see, Alisa, that a part of Google is still an integral part of you, which is how we think scalable, sustainable, and 10x. the first word I heard a lot when I joined Google was 10x. And I can clearly see you've been thinking 10x, because instead of Aliza having million coffees, she actually can inspire a million lives or multi-million lives with this book. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. And I think we really hope this book inspires many to not quit, but rise and thrive in their careers. I have a question as a follow up to this is one of the things that really comes out of the book, and I've evidenced in seeing you in action in corporate life, is your belief that human kindness and connectedness is the key to getting ahead in the corporate world. And this isn't something which is often talked about as a prerequisite for success, unfortunately. So how do you think the attitudes are changing?
Well, first of all, I don't know that it is a prerequisite for success. I have met over the years some people who I think are not particularly kind, who've done very well if you measure success as CEO role or a lot of money. But I think it's becoming more important. And so I'll first say it's been important for me. It's been an important way to enjoy my career. And I think that I wouldn't have thrived without that. And I do seek out companies like Google, where I think, it's really in the DNA and in the values. I also think, as you said, attitudes are really changing. If you look at all the articles during, and I don't know if we can say since the pandemic, I don't know if it's over, but as it's receding, hopefully receding, there's a lot about burnout, wellness, mental health. And I think that there is a lot more focus on employees feeling well. And the fact that if they feel well, they can contribute more to work. And so I actually did write an article for Forbes called, should we call the CEO, instead of chief executive officer, now the chief empathy officer? Because Catalyst research shows that empathetic leaders are not only producing more innovative, productive teams, but they're also more likely to keep good employees. And Business Solver did a survey where it showed 90% of Gen Z, or Z if you're from Australia, employees are more likely to stay with an empathetic employer. So I think there is increasing focus on being inclusive, flexible, and maybe even more civil. I read a number of articles that during the pandemic, we lost some civility. I think because we weren't seeing people anymore. We could do things like just blow off a Zoom call because we weren't seeing anybody. It's not like we weren't showing up to their meeting. And so we have to build that back up. But I do see a lot more emphasis on it, and I'm very gratified by that.
It's absolutely motivating and very energizing for me to hear this. I'm a big fan and strong supporter of empathy, connectedness, and kindness. I think we have to bring those back. While there were many unfortunate things about the pandemic, I think it reaffirmed to everybody why we should bring back kindness and empathy at the front and center and middle of everything we are doing. I can go on and on with my questions, and this conversation is so energizing, but I want to make sure we have some time for our audience questions. So let's get to our audience questions.
How should one think of internal role shifts, especially when you are comfortable in your existing role? So I think if you're comfortable and you like it, you can stay. But if you're curious and you want to learn more and you want to be challenged, I think what you do is go talk to some people in the company about what you think you might want to do. And in the book, I called it job dating, which can either be inside or outside, which is quite a sexy term, I think, for basically informational interviewing of a sort. But, go and find out what's out there. It's really like, I suppose, real dating. When you meet interesting people, it's kind of energizing. You say, what's out there that I could do that's different? And I think usually you can do those first little bits before you tell your manager, because you don't even know if there's something else that you'd like to do. But once you think that there might be something, then I think, you need to tell your manager, hey, I'm thinking about this, and can you help me make it happen? Because again, if they're a good manager, they're going to want that. They'd much rather you stay at Google or wherever you are than leave the firm.
Thank you, Aliza. I think we have another question from the audience.
You read it.
Do you have any? Yeah, I can read it out for you. Do you have any specific advice for a new joiner to achieve the same effect, surviving, rising, and thriving in the career?
Well, I think the only challenge for a new joiner, if you've joined during COVID or just now, is, if you believe, as I do, that part of what enables you to get things done and achieve things in a large organization, particularly one that's matrixed like Google and cross-border like Google or many other organizations, is meeting other people, getting to know them, knowing where things sit. So, a really good thing to do early on is to ask your manager or your peers, who are 10 important people for me to know, in this organization. And you might get a few different lists and then make some time to meet them and to get to know them. I think another good thing for visibility is some sort of slight self-promotion. We often call it the humble brag. I don't think you want to do it all the time, but sometimes people post on LinkedIn, I've done this, I've done that. I think a great way internally is to thank people who've done something for you. First of all, I think it's the right thing to do, and people really appreciate being thanked. It doesn't mean you go out and send 10 thank you emails right now. That would be obsequious. But if someone has really helped you close a client sale, helped you fix an engineering problem, helped you find a code bug, helped you reorganize a schedule that was particularly difficult, you can send them a thank you note, and that starts to build a relationship with them. And sometimes, if it's the right timing, you copy their boss on it. That gives you visibility with their boss, and it lets people know that you've appreciated them. So that's one small, very specific technique. But I think when you're new, go out of your way to meet people and to set some boundaries right away. You don't, work hard and do well, obviously, but you don't have to spend every hour there to prove yourself. And another Zoogler had said to me, and I've quoted her in the book, the way she looks at it is, don't take a meeting, make a friend. So I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic is everybody said, we're so efficient, we're so productive. And I think it was because we all drew down on our social capital. I get on a call with Madhuri. I already know her. We don't have time. She just finished her, 3 o'clock. We have to both be, get off at 4 o'clock for our next one. So it's 3:30. Hi, nice to see you. Bang, 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 bang. But if you spent the time, maybe just at the beginning or just at the end, if you think about a real meeting in the office, you'd come in, somebody's late, somebody's carrying a snack, somebody's carrying some interesting food that you want to try, somebody's trying to force you to eat durian, even though, despite the fact that you lived in Singapore for years, you still don't like it and it's smelling up the meeting room, whatever. And you have some goofy conversation that helps you make friends. But I don't think that happens as much when it's all remote. So as a new joiner, make that extra effort to not just take the meeting, make a friend, get to know somebody. And I think that's a great bit of advice that was passed on to me.
That's a great advice, Alisa. I have to tell you, I'm becoming a fan of your one-liners. I think those that's the next thing we have to publish for you.
Okay.
Great. I think we have one more question. Let's hear it. Can we replace resilience with stamina in your equation and still have the same effect? If yes, was there a reason you chose stamina over resilience? Excellent question.
Yes, I'm trying to look up quickly. I'm trying to Google difference between resilience and stamina to tell you what it is, but I don't know. So if I don't get the answer quickly, although Google, this search engine works really fast. So this says stamina is enduring strength over time. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from a stress or challenge. So I guess with that little bit of assistance, what I was going to say is that I think that I always thought resilience meant hanging in there, but stamina was a little more sort of enjoying it. But I think this is maybe better, which is stamina is kind of this long haul thing, because that's what your career is all about. And resilience means bouncing back, but then it's only for a little bit. So maybe we could make a new equation, Madhuri. I don't think it's as catchy. I'll have to come up with it, but it's like X times resilience equals stamina. Like you got to have resilience a number of times. And that's what I think stamina is. But, I don't think we should play wordsmith. If resilience speaks to you, use it, because I think there is a lot to being resilient when there are down days or down weeks or down months. You do need to kind of hang in there and be able to bounce back. And I think part of that is from moral support. Part of that is from the activities that you have passion for. Part of it is from setting boundaries. Part of it might be from getting advice from a board of directors so that you can bounce back. Thank you for making me think about that.
You've articulated it very well, Aliza. I think, and I like the equation you stated earlier as well, right? Stamina is perseverance plus excitement. Perseverance could be many things, right? It could be, like, as you said, along with grit, you need the optimism and energy to move ahead in life. And I think stamina helps you for the long haul, and resilience is those help you, like, to bounce back as well. And it's much more times of resilience, more of energy, which brings all together in the stamina. So love the way you articulated. I think we have no more audience questions. If you have any, please feel free to type in. But meanwhile, I can ask her another question because I don't want to give up a precious chance to hear from her. You talked about connectedness, you talked about stamina, and I think a lot of us in the corporate world, Aliza, world, we talk about hard work, intelligence, tech savviness, a lot of those. But I think it's not just all of these. I feel it's also our ability to build and maintain genuine relationships throughout our career and life. So, and why do you think this is important?
So I guess we're going back a bit to, building social capital. And I think there are, I guess, 2 or 3 reasons that I think they're important for most people. So one is, frankly, it makes work more fun. I mean, at least for me, I've seen for most people, if they go in, you don't have to be an extrovert, even if you just have like one great friend, but it makes work probably a bit more fun to have somebody to share with, commiserate with, go out to lunch with, schmooze over, hangouts with. I think a second thing is I really do believe other people help you get things done. And there is a difference for most people in getting an email from, knox.alisa@bcg.com, who they've never met, or this person where, I don't know, they've missed a plane with, or we shared a snack, or we've had a silly story together. And somehow that knowing something about somebody can make them much more prone to helping you. So I had this little technique where I used to keep a whole drawer full, I still have some, of ridiculous kitsch items that I bought all over the region because, for the last 15 years, I've been running Asia. And so if somebody, particularly in another part of the world, did something nice for me, I would mail off these things that I paid for out of my personal budget. I think I never spent more than like $2.50 US on each one because I had a lot of them. And it could be a really tacky kangaroo key ring from Australia, or one of those really kitsch Singapore city magnets here, or a little elephant candle from Cambodia, or I know I got some sumo wrestling handkerchiefs in Japan. And I'd mail them off to this person in Kansas or Dublin or Munich. And, they were so cheap that everybody knew it was kind of half a joke, right? Like, it wasn't a joke that I was saying thank you, but it was nowhere near any kind of thing where somebody goes, should I accept this gift? Is it over the limit? Like, it was really clearly pretty close to tacky. And I found, I didn't do it for this reason. I just like the challenge of finding these little silly gifts. But I found that those people were much more prone to helping me the next time around. They knew who I was, or they go, oh yeah, you're the person who sent me the sushi eraser. Yeah, let me see what I can do. So I really believe that building those bonds, however you choose to do it, can help you get things done. And it may also help you get opportunities you wouldn't otherwise get. I got to know Rahul Desai, who's in the book, who was at Google, then Facebook when it was still Facebook, and now at Trip Actions. We built a bond during some kind of interesting travel. And because of that, and because I was able to catch him in one of those big revolving doors where they only have one partition, so there are 2 of you in that section at the same time. And I was like, Rahul, I'm about to move to Asia with Google. Would you like to come with me? And he was like, oh, gosh, I hadn't thought about it. I'm living very happily in Mountain View and, blah, blah, blah. And he came, right? That was a personal connection that he might have come anyway. He might have had a great career anyway, but he does believe that he accelerated faster because he had the chance to come out to what was then a smaller region. And so I just think that the social capital, those personal connections, can often make your career faster, more fun, more productive.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Aliza. I think you alluded to this before as well, that there are so many aspects of building social capital. You talked about personal board of directors, you talked about connections, you talked about genuine relationships. I think all these would really help us build the social capital, which would really in turn help us in many other ways. I can't believe we are almost at the end of the session. I wish we had more time because I think the session has been super energizing and like lots of takeaways, I believe, for myself and for the audience as well. So, as we wrap up, I have one or two things to just end up in a fun way. Since you're here at Google, Aliza, I have to ask, is there a Google product that you can't live without?
There's so many. I mean, I was at Google for 5 years and I'm like got a Google Beach towel. I can't live with that. But the two main things are G Suite and my Pixel phone. I will never give up my Pixel, despite lots of advertising and uh, sort of pressure to the contrary. It's sticking with me. I'll have to get some new models eventually, but yeah.
Great. We share that Google Pixel love with you as well. How about some rapid fire? I think
Okay.
I already know the answer because you alluded, but I'm still going to ask coffee or tea?
Tea for sure, but really Diet Dr. Pepper.
Beach or mountains?
Beach. You know, I moved to Australia in my 20s before I came to Google in Singapore. And they always say that converts are more zealous than people born into things. So, as a convert to being Australian, having an Australian passport, got to go for the beach.
Great, great. I think that brings us to the end of this amazing, fabulous, fantastic session. I can go on with some great adjectives for this session. But Aliza, we can't thank you enough for making time and joining us for this Talks at Google session. It's been super energizing, extremely insightful, and some amazing takeaways for all of us. Thank you so much. And please keep inspiring many. And we are one of them as well. And we really hope what you write and what you talk will inspire many millions of people around. And that will all help them rise and thrive in their careers, including Googlers as well.
Thank you very much, Madhuri. It's been great to join Talks at Google.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone who joined us. We really hope you enjoyed the session with Alisa Knox.